Today's lesson is over learning target 1 in unit 7, where it states that I can solve and graph on a number line linear inequalities. So first we need to define what an inequality is, and that is just comparing two expressions to each other. So kind of like an equation, except that they are not going to be equal to each other. They're going to have these inequalities. So less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So there are sometimes words that we can use to represent these inequalities. So less than would be less than or fewer than. And so on a number line, that looks like an open circle at the value that we are less than at. And then everything to the left, so everything in a negative direction, would be true. A greater than sign would be greater than or more than. On a number line, we would have an open circle above that as well because we're not including it. And then everything to the right would be equivalent or true. Less than or equal to, very similar to the first less than, but it's also equal to because of the line underneath. We can also state this as at most or no more than. So on the number line, the only thing that's different between this and a less than sign is that the circle is closed, meaning we're including the value that we are starting at and everything to the left. Next, we have a greater than or equal to sign. So very similar to a greater than sign, except we're including it. Other words that represent this are at least or no less than. And then on the number line, it looks very similar to a greater than sign, but we have a closed circle and everything to the right is true. Now we want to be able to solve linear inequalities and then graph our solutions on a number line. So how we'll do this is just like what we do when we're solving equations. So like for number 1, I want to add 12 to get x by itself. So that allows me to get 20 on the right side, but now instead of it being equal to, it's greater than or equal to. So then using the number line, I can express this by writing a 20 and then a closed circle, and then everything to the right is true because it's greater than or equal to. For number 2, I want to add 8 to both sides. So that gets me 30 is greater than m, or I can write it as m is less than 30. And on the number line, I can express this by an open circle because I'm not including it, and everything to the left. Okay. Now notice I also write a value of 0 for each of these. This is like a reference point to kind of give me a guide of which side of 0 it is. You don't have to put a lot of points, just 0. 0 and the number that you're using. So number 3, I subtracted 4 to both sides. That gave me negative 23. And then it gives me d is less than or equal to negative 23. So everything less than and negative 23 is true. For number 4, I want to be able to add 8 to both sides. That gets me p is less than 26. So because it's 20 or less than 26, I'll write my 26 open circle above it and then everything to the left. Okay, now for these examples, we're going to be using multiplication and division, but one thing we have to keep in mind here is that when we're multiplying and dividing, if we're multiplying and divide by a negative number, that kind of switches our signs to both sides and changes the inequality. So we have to keep that in mind when we're solving it in this for these operations. So for number 1, we need to multiply both sides by 8 because it's being divided. So that gets us negative 304. And so then on my graph, I find where negative 304 is. And then because it's less than, it's an open circle. So then everything to the left of that would be true. For number 2 here, I need to divide both sides by negative 7. So since I'm dividing by a negative number, I need to switch my sign. So that makes it a greater than or equal to sign. And so that's negative 21. So then I find negative 21 on my number line. Here will be a closed circle, and then everything to the right will be true. So then for number 3, I divide by 9 to get me t is greater than or equal to 12. And then on my number line, I find where 12 is. And then I will have a closed circle, and then everything to the right will be true. And then for number 4, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by negative 6. That means I'm going to have to switch my signs because it's negative, so that makes it negative 48. So I'll find where negative 48 is, and then have an open circle, and everything to the left will be true. Okay, I'm off like a dirty shirt.